The overhead bins rattled as Flight 447 from Atlanta to Chicago prepared for takeoff. In seat 14C, 12-year-old Maya Chen gripped her armrest, her knuckles whitening against the blue fabric. She'd flown alone before. Her parents trusted her, but something about this particular Tuesday morning felt different. Wrong. Miss, I need you to stow that properly. Maya looked up at the flight attendant looming over her. The woman's name tag read, Patricia Morrison, senior flight attendant, but her smile didn't reach her eyes. It was the kind of smile Maya had learned to recognize over the years, the one that masked disgust as professionalism. It's not luggage, Maya said softly. It's my prosthetic. I took it off because the security screening irritated my residual limb. I was going to put it back on before takeoff. Patricia's eyes narrowed as they traveled down to Maya's left leg, or rather, where her left leg ended just below the knee. The prosthetic leg sat on Maya's lap, a sleek carbon fiber blade designed for running. It was top of the line, covered in stickers Maya had collected, a shooting star, a quote that read, "Unbreakable," and a small black Lives Matter fist. Company policy states all personal items must be stowed during takeoff, Patricia said, her voice growing sharper. Overhead bin or under the seat? But it's my leg, Maya protested, her voice cracking. I need to attach it. It takes a few minutes to... Are you refusing to comply with crew instructions? The cabin fell silent. Passengers craned their necks to see the commotion. Maya felt dozens of eyes boring into her, and her cheeks burned with humiliation. She was used to stares, had been since the car accident that took her leg when she was 7, but this was different. This was being made into a spectacle. I'm not refusing anything, Maya said, fighting back tears. I just need a minute to... Patricia reached down and snatched the prosthetic from Maya's lap. The movement was so sudden, so aggressive, that Maya gasped. Hey, that's mine. And it's going in the overhead bin until we reach cruising altitude, Patricia said coldly. She turned on her heel, the prosthetic dangling from her hand like a piece of trash. What happened next would replay in Maya's mind for years to come. As Patricia spun around, her foot, whether intentionally or not, witnesses would later disagree, kicked against Maya's residual limb. The impact wasn't hard, but it didn't need to be. The sensitive tissue, already irritated from security screening, exploded with pain. Maya cried out, tears spilling down her cheeks as she instinctively pulled her leg up to her chest. Oh, don't be so dramatic, Patricia muttered, loud enough for nearby passengers to hear. It barely touched you. Are you fucking serious right now? The voice came from 15B, where a woman in her 30s was half standing, her face flushed with anger. She's a child and you just kicked her. Ma'am, sit down, or I'll have you removed from this flight, Patricia snapped. I want everyone here to see this, the woman said, pulling out her phone. You just assaulted a disabled child. Patricia's face went red. Recording is not permitted during. Actually, it is, interrupted a man across the aisle in a business suit. He was also recording. FAA regulations don't prohibit passenger recordings. I'm an attorney, by the way. You might want to rethink your next move. Patricia's jaw clenched. For a moment, she seemed to weigh her options. Then, with deliberate slowness, she opened the overhead bin and tossed Maya's prosthetic inside. The sound of expensive carbon fiber clattering against hard luggage made Maya flinch. Buckle up, Patricia said to the cabin. We're about to depart. As she stalked toward the front of the plane, Maya pulled out her phone with shaking hands. Through her tears, she managed to type out a text message. Mom, something bad happened. They won't let me put my leg on. The flight attendant hurt me. What Patricia Morrison didn't know, what none of them knew yet, was that Maya's mother, Dr. Yuki Chen, wasn't just any concerned parent. She was the deputy administrator of the Federal Aviation Administration, second in command of the entire agency. And she was about to turn Patricia's world upside down. But that revelation was still 43 minutes away. 30,000 feet and rising. The plane leveled off at cruising altitude, and Patricia Morrison moved through the cabin with her drink cart, her professional mask firmly back in place. She'd been a flight attendant for 16 years, long enough to know how to handle difficult passengers. Long enough to know that complaints rarely went anywhere, especially when you had seniority. In seat 14C, Maya sat rigid, her residual limb throbbing with each heartbeat. Without her prosthetic properly attached, she felt exposed, vulnerable, incomplete. She'd worked so hard to never feel this way, to never let her disability define her. But right now, strapped into this seat while her legs sat in an overhead bin like a forgotten umbrella, she felt every bit the other that people's stares implied she was. Her phone buzzed. "Mom, what do you mean they hurt you? Are you okay? Call me when you land." Maya's fingers hesitated over the keyboard. She didn't want to worry her mother, but she also didn't want to lie. "Maya, flight attendant made me put my prosthetic in overhead bin. She kicked my residual limb when I was holding it. It really hurts. I'm scared, Mom." 3 dots appeared immediately, then disappeared. Then appeared again. Maya could picture her mother's face, that specific expression she got when someone had really fucked up and didn't know it yet. It was a look that had made more than one airline executive sweat during safety hearings. "Mom, what airline? What flight number?" "Maya, Atlantic Airways, Flight 447 to Chicago." "Mom, gate agent's name?" "Maya, Patricia Morrison, Senior Flight Attendant." The 3 dots appeared and stayed for a long time. When the message finally came through, it was just 2 words: "I'm sorry." Maya frowned at her phone. Sorry? Her mom never just apologized without action. Something else was coming. What Maya didn't see was her mother in her corner office at FAA headquarters, her face carved from granite as she pulled up Atlantic Airways operational files. Dr. Yuki Chen had spent 15 years working her way up from a regional airline pilot to the second highest position in aviation safety oversight. She'd faced down sexism, racism, and every combination thereof. She'd investigated crashes that killed hundreds. She'd grounded entire fleets when safety protocols were violated. But nothing, absolutely nothing, had ever made her this angry. "Beverages?" Patricia's voice dripped with false sweetness as she stopped the cart beside Maya's row. Maya kept her eyes down. "No, thank you." "Smart choice," Patricia murmured, quiet enough that the other passengers couldn't hear. "Wouldn't want any more accidents, would we?" Maya's head snapped up, her eyes wide. Did this woman just threaten her? The passenger in 15B leaned forward. "Excuse me, what did you just say to her?" Patricia's smile didn't waver. "I asked if she'd like any beverages. Perhaps you misheard." "The fuck I did. I heard you." "Language, please," Patricia interrupted smoothly. "There are children present." The irony of the statement, given that she was currently intimidating a child, seemed lost on her. "Now, would you like something to drink, or shall I move on?" The woman in 15B pulled out her phone again. Patricia's eyes flashed with irritation, but she maintained her composure as she pushed the cart forward. She'd been recorded before. Videos surfaced, Twitter got angry for a few days, and then everyone moved on. That's how it always worked. Except this time would be different. Because at that exact moment, 3 things were happening simultaneously. First, the woman in 15B was uploading her video to Twitter with the caption, "Atlantic Airways flight attendant just assaulted a disabled black child and threw her prosthetic leg into overhead storage. This is disgusting. #Atlantic Airways, #ableism, #racism. Second, the attorney in the business suit was emailing the video to his paralegal with instructions to preserve it as evidence and send it to his contacts at the ACLU. Third, Dr. Yuki Chen was on a conference call with Atlantic Airways CEO, Marcus Sterling, and her voice had the temperature of liquid nitrogen. "I'm going to say this once, Marcus, and I suggest you listen carefully. One of your senior flight attendants just physically assaulted my 12-year-old daughter and confiscated her prosthetic leg. My daughter is currently at 30,000 feet, in pain, unable to access her mobility device. Do you understand what I'm telling you?" On the other end of the line, Marcus Sterling's face had gone white. He knew exactly who Dr. Chen was. Every airline executive did. The FAA could ground planes, revoke certifications, levy millions in fines. And he'd just heard the second most powerful person in that agency say that someone in his company had hurt her child. Dr. Chen, I'm so sorry. I'll have someone look into. You'll do more than look into it, Yuki cut him off. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to have your operations center contact that flight immediately. You're going to have the captain personally ensure my daughter's prosthetic is returned to her and that she's given any assistance she needs. Then you're going to meet me at O'Hare Airport, because I'm getting on the next flight to Chicago. And Marcus? That flight attendant's employment status better be in serious question by the time I land, or I'll be opening a full investigation into Atlantic Airways' ADA compliance across your entire operation. Am I clear? Crystal clear, Dr. Chen. Good. And Marcus? If anyone, and I mean anyone, retaliates against my daughter or those passengers who recorded this incident, you'll find out exactly how bad your company's next few years can be. I've seen your safety records. You really don't want me digging deeper. The call ended. Marcus Sterling sat in his executive office, his hands shaking slightly as he reached for his phone to call the operations center. In his 16 years as CEO, he'd never heard that level of controlled fury in someone's voice. It was the kind of anger that didn't need to yell because it had actual power behind it. The kind of anger that ended careers. The turning point. At 32,000 feet, Captain James Rodriguez received a priority message from operations. He read it twice, his jaw tightening with each word, then unbuckled and walked back into the cabin. Patricia Morrison was in the galley, preparing more drinks. She looked up in surprise as the captain approached. Captains rarely left the cockpit during routine flights. Patricia, I need to speak with you. Now. His tone left no room for argument. They stepped into the small galley area at the back of the plane, away from passengers' direct line of sight but not entirely private. Is there a problem, Captain? Patricia asked, her voice steady but her eyes calculating. You tell me. Did you confiscate a prosthetic leg from a passenger? Patricia's expression remained neutral. I enforced FAA regulations regarding stowage of personal items during takeoff. The passenger was non-compliant. A prosthetic leg is a medical device, not a personal item, Captain Rodriguez said, his voice low but sharp. And I just received a priority alert from corporate. That passenger is the daughter of Dr. Yuki Chen. Do you know who that is? Patricia's face went pale. Every person in the aviation industry knew. The deputy administrator of the FAA, the woman who could shut down airlines with a signature. I didn't know. It shouldn't matter who her mother is, the captain interrupted. You shouldn't be treating any passenger that way, let alone a disabled child. But since we're talking consequences, let me be clear. I just got a direct order from our CEO to personally ensure that child gets her prosthetic leg back and receives an apology. Operations also informed me that several passengers filmed the incident, and it's already going viral on social media. Patricia's legs felt weak. Viral? No. She thought of her pension, her seniority, her entire career. 16 years. She'd given 16 years to Atlantic Airways. Captain, I was just following protocol. The girl was being difficult and... The girl is 12 years old and was trying to put on her prosthetic leg, Captain Rodriguez said, his voice hard as steel. And according to the report I just received, you kicked her residual limb. Did that happen? It was an accident. I didn't mean to. So you admit you made physical contact with her injured limb? Patricia's mouth opened and closed. She was trapped. If she said yes, she was admitting to assaulting a minor. If she said no, she was calling the captain a liar and contradicting what was already on video. I'm going to make this very simple, Captain Rodriguez continued. You're going to go to seat 14C. You're going to retrieve that child's prosthetic leg from the overhead bin with the utmost care. You're going to apologize to her, sincerely. And then you're going to provide her with whatever assistance she needs for the remainder of this flight. After we land, you're going to report directly to the chief pilot's office at O'Hare. Do you understand me? Patricia nodded mutely, her carefully constructed professional facade crumbling. She'd dealt with complaints before, but she'd never had a captain personally dress her down mid-flight. That only happened when things were serious. Really serious. As she walked back through the cabin, Patricia felt every eye on her. The passengers knew something was happening. The woman in 15B was still recording, a slight smile on her face. Patricia stopped at row 14, where Maya sat with her arms wrapped around herself, staring out the window. The girl looked so small, so vulnerable. For the first time since the incident, Patricia felt something crack in her chest. Not quite guilt, not quite remorse, but something close to recognition. This wasn't some adult trying to bend the rules. This was a kid. Just a kid who needed her leg. "Excuse me," Patricia said softly. Maya turned, her eyes red-rimmed from crying. She didn't speak. Patricia opened the overhead bin and carefully, so carefully, lifted out the prosthetic leg. She'd been careless before, letting it clatter against the luggage. Now, holding it properly, she could feel how light it was, how precisely engineered. She could see the stickers Maya had placed on it, each one a small declaration of personality and resilience. "Here," Patricia said, holding it out. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have taken this from you, and I shouldn't have. I'm sorry I hurt you." Maya took her prosthetic, pulling it close to her chest like a treasured possession. Which of course it was. It wasn't just a medical device, it was part of her. It was her freedom, her independence, her ability to run and jump, and just be a regular kid. "Can I help you put it on?" Patricia asked. "No." Maya's voice was quiet but firm. "I don't want you touching me." The woman in 15B spoke up. "I can help her if she needs it." Patricia nodded, stepping back. The weight of her mistake was settling on her shoulders now, heavy as concrete. She returned to the galley, where Captain Rodriguez was waiting with his arms crossed. "Done." "Yes, Captain. Good. When we land, you're suspended pending investigation. Don't bother clearing out your locker. HR will handle that. You're to have no contact with any passengers from this flight, especially the Chen family. Understood?" Patricia's world was collapsing. "Captain, please. I've been with Atlantic for 16 years. I made a mistake, but—" "You assaulted a child," he said flatly. "On camera. While that child's mother happens to be the second most powerful person in aviation oversight. Even if she was nobody's daughter, what you did was wrong. But since she is Dr. Chen's daughter, and since we're now looking at a potential FAA investigation into our ADA compliance, our CEO wants you as far from this situation as possible. I have a family. I have bills. I can't just—" "You should have thought about that before you decided to bully a disabled kid." Captain Rodriguez turned away. "We'll be landing in 40 minutes. I suggest you spend that time thinking about what you're going to say to HR." In seat 14C, Maya was working with the woman from 15B, whose name was Jennifer, to properly attach her prosthetic. It was an intimate process, one Maya usually did alone or with her mother, but she was grateful for the help. Her hands were still shaking too much to handle the straps properly. "You're very brave," Jennifer said softly as she helped adjust the socket. "My nephew has a prosthetic arm. I know how much these mean to you." "I just wanted to put it on," Maya whispered. "I wasn't trying to cause trouble." "Sweetheart, you didn't cause anything. That woman caused trouble all by herself." Jennifer finished with the straps and sat back. "How does that feel?" Maya stood carefully in the cramped space, testing her weight. The fit was good. The residual limb still hurt from Patricia's kick, but the prosthetic itself was properly attached. She could walk again. She was whole again. "Thank you," Maya said and meant it. Her phone buzzed. Another text from her mother. "Captain has been notified. You should have your leg back by now. I'm boarding a flight to Chicago. I'll see you at O'Hare. I love you, baby girl. This wasn't your fault." Maya read the message 3 times, feeling something tight in her chest finally loosen. Her mom was coming. Her mom would fix this. Her mom always fixed things. What Maya didn't fully understand yet was that her mother wasn't just coming to comfort her. Dr. Yuki Chen was coming to burn down everyone who'd thought it was acceptable to treat her daughter this way. The lawyer in the business suit, his name was David Park, had been busy during the flight. He'd contacted his firm's media department, his civil rights contacts, and several disability advocacy organizations he'd worked with on previous cases. By the time Flight 447 began its descent into O'Hare, the incident had been picked up by 3 major news outlets. The hashtag Atlantic Airways ableism was trending. The original video from Jennifer in 15B had been retweeted over 50,000 times. A disability rights organization had already drafted a statement calling for a federal investigation into Atlantic Airways' treatment of disabled passengers. And somewhere in the Atlantic Airways corporate headquarters, Marcus Sterling was realizing that this wasn't just a PR problem. This was a Category 5 shitstorm, and it was about to make landfall directly on top of his company. O'Hare International Airport. The plane touched down at 2:47 p.m. Chicago time. As the seatbelt sign dinged off, Patricia Morrison gathered her things with shaking hands. She'd been a flight attendant long enough to know what was waiting for her. Corporate would have a security escort ready, maybe even airport police. She'd be walked out quickly, quietly, with minimal fuss. But she wasn't prepared for what actually happened. As the passengers disembarked, Patricia stood near the front of the plane, required by protocol to smile and thank people for flying Atlantic Airways. Most passengers ignored her. A few shot her dirty looks. One man muttered, "Fucking disgraceful," as he passed. Then came Maya. The girl walked down the aisle slowly, her prosthetic working perfectly now. She didn't look at Patricia. Didn't acknowledge her at all. Just walked past like Patricia was invisible, like she didn't matter. Somehow, that was worse than any insult could have been. Jennifer from 15B stopped, though. She looked Patricia dead in the eye and said, "I hope you learned something from this. That girl showed you more grace in one flight than you showed her in one moment. Think about that when you're looking for a new job." David Park, the attorney, simply handed Patricia a business card. "When you get sued, and you will get sued, you'll want representation. That's not my card. That's opposing counsel's. They're very good." He smiled coldly. "Tell your lawyers I said hello." Patricia stood there, the business card heavy as lead in her hand, watching the passengers file off. When the last one cleared, Captain Rodriguez emerged from the cockpit. "2 men are waiting for you at the gate," he said. "Security and HR. I'd cooperate fully if I were you." Then he too was gone, and Patricia was alone in the empty cabin. 16 years of service, and this was how it ended. In an empty plane, holding a business card from a lawyer she'd probably see across a courtroom someday. She walked up the jetway on legs that felt like rubber. The 2 men waiting for her weren't hostile, just professional. They escorted her through the terminal, away from the main concourse where passengers wouldn't see. Through a door marked Employees Only, and down a hallway to a small office. The HR director, a woman named Sandra Walsh, was waiting with a folder. "Ms. Morrison, please sit." Patricia sat. Her mind was racing, trying to figure out what to say, how to explain, how to salvage this. But Sandra's first words killed any hope of that. "We've reviewed the video footage from the incident on Flight 447. We've also received a formal complaint from the FAA's deputy administrator regarding your treatment of her daughter. In light of these events and the severity of your actions, Atlantic Airways is terminating your employment effective immediately. You're being fired for cause, which means no severance package and no positive reference. Your final paycheck will be mailed to your address on file." "Wait," Patricia said, her voice cracking. "Wait, can't we talk about this?" "I apologized to the girl. The captain saw me apologize." "You assaulted a minor passenger and violated ADA regulations," Sandra said, her voice professionally sympathetic but implacable. "There's nothing to talk about. Additionally, the FAA has opened an investigation into our disability accommodation procedures. Your actions may have triggered a federal audit of our entire operation. The company's legal team is considering whether to pursue action against you for any damages resulting from that investigation." Patricia felt like she was falling. I didn't mean for any of this. Intent doesn't matter. Impact does." Sandra slid a termination letter across the desk. "Please sign this acknowledging receipt of your termination notice. Your employee access has been revoked. Security will escort you to collect your personal items from your locker, then off airport property." Patricia's hand shook as she signed the paper. Her career was over. Her reputation was destroyed. And all because she'd decided to power trip on a 12-year-old girl who just wanted to wear her prosthetic leg. 3 terminals away, Maya Chen sat in an airport Starbucks with Jennifer and David Park, who'd both insisted on staying with her until her mother arrived. They were sharing a plate of cookies, and Jennifer was telling a story about her nephew's first day at school with his prosthetic arm, making Maya smile for the first time in hours. He told his teacher it was a robot arm and he could control it with his thoughts, Jennifer said, laughing. The teacher believed him for about 10 seconds before. Maya turned to see her mother rushing toward them, pulling a small rolling suitcase. Dr. Yuki Chen looked professional as always in her dark suit, but her eyes were wet with tears. Maya stood up and found herself wrapped in her mother's arms, held so tight she could barely breathe. "I'm so sorry, baby," Yuki whispered into her daughter's hair. "I'm so sorry that happened to you." "It's okay, Mom. I'm okay now." Yuki pulled back, holding Maya's face in her hands, studying her for any signs of injury or trauma. "Your leg? Let me see." "Mom, fine. These people helped me." Maya gestured to Jennifer and David. "They made sure I was okay." Yuki turned to them, and both adults saw something fierce and grateful in her eyes. "Thank you. Thank you for protecting my daughter." "She didn't need much protecting," Jennifer said warmly. "She's tougher than half the adults I know." "Ms. Chen, Dr. Chen," David Park said, extending his hand. David Park, attorney. "I witnessed the entire incident and have video documentation. I've already contacted the ACLU and several disability rights organizations. If you're planning legal action, I'd like to offer my services pro bono." Yuki shook his hand firmly. "I appreciate that. And yes, there will be legal action. Against the airline, against that flight attendant personally, and I'm pushing for federal charges if possible." Her voice was calm, but underneath it was steel. "Nobody hurts my daughter and walks away." The investigation. What followed in the next 3 weeks would become a case study in corporate accountability and federal oversight. Dr. Yuki Chen didn't just file a lawsuit. She initiated a comprehensive FAA investigation into Atlantic Airways' compliance with the Air Carrier Access Act. This meant inspectors descended on the airline's training facilities, operations centers, and administrative offices. Every disability accommodation complaint from the past 5 years was pulled and reviewed. Every flight attendant's training records were examined. What they found was damning. Atlantic Airways' disability sensitivity training was perfunctory at best, a 30-minute online module that most employees clicked through without reading. There was no specific training on prosthetic devices, mobility aids, or appropriate responses to passengers with disabilities. Complaint procedures were opaque and rarely followed up on. In short, Patricia Morrison wasn't an isolated problem. She was a symptom of systemic failure. The media coverage was relentless. Maya's story, carefully told with her permission, became national news. Disability advocates rallied behind her. The hashtag Justice for Maya trended for days. Atlantic Airways stock dropped 15% in a week. Marcus Sterling, the CEO, found himself giving testimony before a congressional subcommittee on transportation and infrastructure. Senator Williams from Maryland asked him point-blank, "Mr. Sterling, how does a senior flight attendant with 16 years of experience not know that a prosthetic leg is a medical device, not a piece of luggage?" Sterling had no good answer. 2 months after the incident, Atlantic Airways settled with the Chen family for an undisclosed amount, rumored to be in the 7 figures. The settlement included a requirement that the airline implement comprehensive disability awareness training developed in consultation with advocacy organizations. Every flight attendant would undergo 8 hours of in-person training annually. Every airplane would carry updated information on disability accommodation procedures. Patricia Morrison, meanwhile, had lost everything. She couldn't find work in aviation. No airline would touch her after what happened. She'd become a cautionary tale, her name synonymous with discrimination and abuse of power. Her social media profiles were flooded with angry messages. She'd had to move after someone doxed her address online. Some people felt sorry for her. Most didn't. 6 months later, Maya Chen stood at the starting line of the Junior Paralympic trials, her running blade gleaming in the afternoon sun. This prosthetic was new, top of the line, paid for in part by the settlement money. But more importantly, it represented something bigger than just a piece of equipment. It represented her refusal to be made small. In the stands, Dr. Yuki Chen sat with Jennifer and David Park, who'd both become family friends in the months since the incident. They watched as Maya settled into her starting position, focused and calm. The starting gun fired. Maya exploded forward, her blade striking the track in a rhythm that was pure poetry. She ran like she was flying, like nothing could hold her back, like she was proving something to everyone who'd ever looked at her prosthetic with pity or disgust or discomfort. She ran like she was free. She didn't win that race, came in fourth actually, but when she crossed the finish line, she was smiling. That's what her mother saw from the stands, not disappointment, but pure joy. The joy of a kid doing what she loved, in a body that was perfectly and completely hers. After the race, a journalist from ESPN approached them. She'd been covering Maya's story from the beginning and wanted to do a follow-up piece. "Maya, how do you feel knowing that what happened to you led to changes across the entire airline industry?" the journalist asked. Maya thought about it carefully. She was 12, almost 13 now, and she'd learned that words mattered. That her story mattered. "I feel like it shouldn't have taken someone's mom being important for them to treat me like a person," Maya said slowly. "But I'm glad that other kids with disabilities won't have to go through what I did. I'm glad that flight attendant can't hurt anyone else." "Do you think she deserved to lose her job?" Maya met the journalist's eyes steadily. "I think she made a choice. She chose to be cruel when she could have been kind. She chose to see my prosthetic as an inconvenience instead of seeing me as a person. Actions have consequences. She's learning that now." "Wise words from someone so young," the journalist said. "Any message you want to share with people watching?" Maya glanced at her mother, who nodded encouragingly. "Yeah," Maya said. "If you see someone being treated unfairly, don't just watch. Say something. Record it if you need to. Stand up for people. And if you're the person being treated unfairly, remember that you matter. Your worth isn't determined by how other people see you. It's determined by who you know yourself to be." The interview aired that evening. By morning, it had been viewed over 5 million times. The aftermath. Patricia Morrison watched Maya's interview from her studio apartment in a cheaper part of Atlanta. She'd been forced to downsize after losing her job, her savings depleting faster than she'd anticipated. She worked retail now, in a department store, making a fraction of what she'd earned as a senior flight attendant. She watched Maya run across that finish line, watched her give that interview with such composure and grace, and something inside Patricia finally broke. Not broke like shattering, broke like cracking open. Like sunlight finally finding its way into a dark room. She'd spent 6 months blaming everyone else. The girl for being difficult. The mother for being powerful. The passengers for recording her. The airline for not supporting her. The media for destroying her reputation. But watching Maya now, watching this kid who should hate her, who'd have every right to hate her, instead spreading a message of standing up for others, Patricia couldn't maintain her delusions anymore. She'd been wrong. Completely, utterly, inexcusably wrong. That night, Patricia sat down and wrote a letter. Not to Maya directly, she'd been legally prohibited from contacting the family as part of the settlement, but to a disability advocacy organization that had been instrumental in the Atlantic Airways reforms. The letter read, "My name is Patricia Morrison. I'm the flight attendant from the Atlantic Airways incident. I want you to know that I understand now what I did. Not just that it was wrong according to regulations, but that it was cruel. I looked at a child in pain and made it worse because I cared more about my authority than her humanity. I've lost my career, my reputation, and my sense of self. But I deserved to lose those things. What I didn't deserve was the grace that Maya Chen showed me when she could have destroyed me further. She didn't call for violence against me. She didn't celebrate my suffering. She just told people to be better. To do better. I'm trying to do better now. I volunteer at a disability resource center on weekends. I'm taking actual courses on disability justice and ableism. I'm learning everything I should have known before I ever put on a flight attendant uniform. I know I can't undo what I did. I can't give back the trauma or the fear or the pain. But maybe I can spend the rest of my life making sure other people don't make the mistakes I made. Maybe I can be the person who speaks up when they see someone being treated the way I treated Maya. Maybe that's not redemption. Maybe I don't deserve redemption. But it's something. It's a start. The letter was shared, with Patricia's permission, on the organization's website. The response was mixed. Some people felt she was just trying to rehabilitate her image. Others saw genuine contrition. Most agreed that actions would speak louder than words. Patricia understood that. She showed up to the Disability Resource Center every weekend. She listened to people's stories. She learned about the daily indignities that disabled people faced, the assumptions and barriers and outright discrimination. She started speaking at training seminars for customer service workers, using her own story as a cautionary tale. I was that person, she'd tell them. I was the one who thought rules mattered more than people. Don't be me. Be better than I was. It wasn't glamorous work. It didn't pay anything. But for the first time in months, Patricia felt like maybe, just maybe, she was doing something that mattered. 1 year later, the congressional hearing room was packed. Dr. Maya Chen sat at the witness table, there to testify about the success of the new disability accommodation regulations that had been implemented across the airline industry in the wake of Maya's case. In the 12 months since the Atlantic Airways incident, Yuki testified, we've seen a 73% decrease in disability-related complaints across all major carriers. Flight attendants are better trained, policies are clearer, and passengers with disabilities report feeling safer and more respected. But this isn't just about numbers. She pulled out her phone and displayed a photo on the screen behind her. Maya, mid-jump on her running blade, arms spread wide, face split in a grin. This is my daughter, Yuki said, her voice thick with emotion. She's 13 now. She's training for the Paralympics. She flies regularly to competitions, and she hasn't had a single negative experience since that day on Flight 447. Not one. That's the result of systemic change. That's what happens when we decide that the rights and dignity of disabled people actually matter. The room erupted in applause. After the hearing, Yuki was approached by a young woman in her 20s using a wheelchair. Dr. Chen? I just wanted to thank you. I fly for work frequently, and the difference over the past year has been incredible. Staff actually ask how they can help instead of assuming. They treat my wheelchair like the medical device it is, not like luggage. Your daughter's courage changed my life. Yuki smiled but shook her head gently. Thank Maya, not me. She's the one who faced that situation with dignity. I just made sure her story was heard. Will you tell her thank you for me? I will. And please, tell your story too. Keep holding airlines accountable. Change only sticks when we all keep pushing. Maya Chen's story became more than just a viral moment or a lawsuit. It became a rallying cry for disability rights in transportation. It sparked a national conversation about ableism, about how disabled people are treated in public spaces, about the intersection of disability and race and age and power. Schools started using Maya's case in their social studies classes, talking about civil rights and advocacy. Disability organizations used it as an example of why documentation and bystander intervention mattered. Airlines used it in their training as a vivid reminder of what not to do. And Maya herself? She kept running. She competed. She trained. She lived her life as a regular kid who just happened to be missing part of her leg. She went to school, hung out with friends, complained about homework, crushed on a boy in her math class. She was 13 and she was whole, and she was exactly who she was meant to be. The prosthetic leg that Patricia Morrison had thrown in the overhead bin now sat in a display case at the Smithsonian's National Museum of American History, part of an exhibit on disability rights activism. Maya had donated it when she'd outgrown it, along with a handwritten note. This leg carried me through one of the hardest days of my life. But it also carried me forward. Keep going. Keep fighting. Keep being exactly who you are. On the anniversary of the incident, Maya posted on social media. Not a long rant, not a call for justice. Just a simple photo of her new running blade and a caption. 1 year ago, someone tried to take my leg. Today, I'm using it to fly. Thanks to everyone who stood up for me. Keep standing up for others. The post got 2 million likes. Because that's the thing about truth, about justice, about standing up when something is wrong. It resonates. It spreads. It changes things. One person's cruelty had tried to diminish Maya Chen. But thousands of people's solidarity had lifted her up instead. And in the end, that made all the difference. 5 years later, 17-year-old Maya Chen stood on a podium in Tokyo, a silver medal around her neck, having just placed second in the 400-meter sprint at the Paralympic Games. The cameras flashed. The crowd roared. And somewhere in the stands, her mother cried tears of pride. In Atlanta, Patricia Morrison watched the race on her television. She'd never stopped following Maya's career, though she'd never contacted the family. She watched Maya accept her medal with that same grace she'd shown in the interview years ago, and Patricia smiled through her own tears. She still volunteered at the Disability Resource Center every weekend. She still spoke at training seminars. She'd never gone back to aviation, couldn't really with her record, but she'd found purpose in education, in making sure others learned from her mistakes. Was it redemption? Maybe not. But it was something. It was growth. It was proof that people could change even if they couldn't undo the harm they'd caused. On the podium in Tokyo, Maya looked directly at the camera. She pointed to the sky, a gesture she always made, honoring the grandmother she'd lost in the car accident that took her leg. Then she pointed to her heart. Keep going. Keep fighting. Keep being exactly who you are. The message was universal. But for anyone who knew her story, it carried extra weight. It said, I survived. Thrived. And you can too. That night, Maya's Twitter, now with over 1 million followers, posted one final update. They tried to clip my wings. I learned to fly anyway. Dove, second place medal. And isn't that the whole point? People will try to diminish you, to put you in a box, to make you smaller than you are. But you don't have to accept their definition of who you can be. You can take the thing they tried to break you with and turn it into the foundation of your strength. You can run when they said you'd stumble. You can soar when they said you'd fall. You can be whole when they tried to make you feel incomplete. Because your worth was never theirs to determine. It was always, always yours.